Since the Yemen war began in March 2015, airstrikes and military operations by the Saudi-led coalition forces are estimated to have directly killed more than 60,000 civilians. And that's not including the tens of thousands more who've died from starvation and disease. Britain has licensed nearly $7 billion of arms exports to Saudi Arabia and the coalition nations since the war started. And in 2018, a UN report alleged that UK and US weapons had been used in attacks which may amount to war crimes. Now this House of Lords committee has concluded that UK arms exports narrowly contravene humanitarian law, and the government should act.
Challenge the apparent violations much more vigorously, put the pressure on with the Stockholm Agreement, and review export licenses and tighten them up, certainly, yes, which would mean closing down to some extent the flow of weapons.
The government had argued that Saudi Arabia's own review mechanisms were sufficient, but the Lords disagreed. Relying on assurances by Saudi Arabia and Saudi-led review processes is not an adequate way of implementing the obligations for a risk-based assessment, they said. The government asserts that in its licensing of arms sales to Saudi Arabia, it is narrowly on the right side of international humanitarian law. Although conclusive evidence is not yet available, we assess that it is narrowly on the wrong side. In 2017, the group Campaign Against the Arms Trade tried and failed to have British weapons exports to Saudi Arabia declared illegal. This new Lords report has been published just weeks before the campaigners take their case to the appeal court.
When UK-made fighter jets are flying over Yemen and dropping UK-made bombs, that cannot be divorced from responsibilities of the UK government. It's time for the government to end its support for this terrible catastrophic war and work towards a peaceful political solution.
For the moment, the UK is not yet ready to change policy, in a statement saying the key test for the export of items which might be used in the conflict in Yemen is whether there is a clear risk that the equipment might be used in the commission of a serious violation of international humanitarian law. Our current assessment is that exports to Saudi Arabia are consistent with the consolidated EU and national arms export licensing criteria. This highly critical report from a committee of the UK Parliament's upper house comes at a critical time in the war in Yemen as it approaches its 4th anniversary next month, and with Western powers increasingly seeking to distance themselves from the conduct of the Saudi-led coalition. And the central message of this report from the Lords is that the UK government really needs to decide now where its priorities lie. Paul Brennan, Al Jazeera, London.